the Northwest home for paranormal, you're listening to U.S. Phenomenon with your host, Mario Magana.
From the Pacific Northwest in the shadow of the 1962 World's Fair, the Space Needle. This is U.S. Phenomenon, and I am your host, Mario Magana, where we explore the extraordinary and the unexplained. Tonight, we're going to go someplace that has been Googled in the last couple of weeks, significantly getting a large Google share of in trending. Tonight, we're going to talk all things Project 2025. Now, if you ask, what the hell is Project 2025? Well, we're going to get into that and what it could look like for you and look like for all of us. I mean, who am I kidding? This is not just about you. This is about all of us and how that could play out for us. So our guest this evening needs no introduction. He's an East Coast journalist, an author who wrote a book about William Cooper titled Pale Horse Rider. The hip hop community is in love with this folk tale of an individual now, since he's no longer with us. The author of Pale Horse Rider, Mark Jacobson. You can find him at Pale Horse Rider Book. It is my pleasure to welcome back to U.S. Phenomenon, Mark Jacobson. Welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, Mario, what's up?
You know, I mean, let's see.
I don't look too bad here, do I?
I mean, well, let's see.
I'm an old guy, and I just got up, so
I mean, look, it's nighttime, and I'm sorry to have to wake you on the East Coast time. For those who are listening to us on the East, who may be listening to us on the East Coast. Hey, look, you're great for radio because no one can see your face. But if you'd like to watch the podcast,
no, I absolutely don't. I'm happy to listen to it.
You can watch it. You can watch us either.
I can look in the mirror and see the sad news anytime I want.
Man, so in today's society, the world looks like we have reelected a person who won in 2016, excuse me. But this time it looks like he won hands down. I mean, not like the Hillary Clinton 2016 type election, but it looks like it was, like, to be honest with you, kind of an ass whooping. I mean, looks like we're missing some, I don't know. I don't want to get into the we're missing votes type situation, but it looks like there was enormous amount of individuals that may have not gone out to the polls and voted. So here we are in the world today where President-elect Trump is moving forward with his administration with a transition of power, a peaceful transition of power. Look, this is going to be interesting for those who have been Googling Project 2025, also been trending, as well as a Google search, how the hell to get the hell out of the country.
Yeah, I know. I saw that. I mean, the people always say that, I mean, they never go, but they always say that.
I mean, look, I mean, regardless on what side of the fence you might be on.
Yeah, like I'm gonna sell everything I own and move to a place I don't know anybody, and try to, and most of the people that are saying that are over 40 anyhow. I mean, it's just it's like sour grapes on one respect and fear in the other.
I mean, when we talk about this and fear on levels that might be a little bit more, since I'm in the business of speculation, I mean, sometimes
you're in the business of rabble rousing, Mario.
Yeah. Did we get sold some snake oil by somebody who may, like, I don't know. Do we say we're getting one thing and may get the other? It's just, I mean, we know what we're getting. We know that we're going to get 4 years of.
I don't think you know what you're getting. I think it could go. It's really kind of like up in the air at this point.
For those who are I mean, I don't know. People are speculating on what's going to happen, and clearly, Project 2025 is a comprehensive restructuring, possibly, of the United States federal government.
Well, I mean, let's get into that. Before we do get into the 2025 thing,
Yes,
those 20 million votes that people
right.
didn't show up this time.
Yeah,
I mean, I am. This is, as somebody who didn't really quite buy into the previous edition of this idea that, like, the counting was all wrong. I don't. I don't buy this either. I mean, people didn't show up because, and of those 20 million votes, like at least 15 million was supposed to go into the Democratic candidate, into that Democratic column, right? I mean,
sure,
that's just a simple math. So I think when you get down to it, is the Democrats they deserve to lose. I mean,
sure.
it's just they deserve to lose. It didn't mean that Trump deserved to win, but they deserve to lose, and they lost. Because you know if you had a business and you were managing it the way the Democratic Party runs their party, you'd be out of business a long time ago, and they deserve to be out of business. I mean, if the goal is to win the election, the Republicans are really much better at winning elections. Governing, which is supposed to be the long-term goal of all this, well, that's a different story altogether. But when it comes down to winning elections, the Democrats are hopeless. Uh, the fact that they win every once in a while is just sort of like, it's an anomaly.
I mean, and think about this. I mean, not to get into too many of the different. Well, I mean, that is my role, but think about it. So you get an election. You have an election in 2026. 2016. Trump wins. Now, was that the anti-Obama vote? People are like, I'm just sick of the whole like. Yeah.
It's like,
Well, I mean, and not only that, but you send a retread up there to be like the next. I mean, I'm not Hillary
well,
Clinton.
this is all. I mean, everybody I know in the kind of, I live in New York City. People have freaked out that Donald Trump got 29% of the vote. Now, 29% of the vote is a loser share, big time loser share. But last time he got 16%. He got 29% in the Bronx. Now, he got 8% in the Bronx previously. That's 8% of the vote. I could get 8% of the vote. So now we got 29% of the vote. So, like, what is that about? Does that mean they really want Donald Trump to be the president? I don't know. I mean, it's a kind of, if Oklahoma votes for Donald Trump, well, yeah, okay, Oklahoma voted for Donald Trump. They always would vote for Donald Trump. But when you have people in your hometown, which is the most liberal city in the country, I'm not talking about San Francisco. These people are just Martians. I mean, this is a real place, New York City. So, like, we've been, and actually, there's a mythic thing about New York where, like, they always vote Democratic, and it's hopeless, blah 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 blah. But if you look at the mayors of New York City, Giuliani won in 1993. He won in 1997. Bloomberg won in 2001. He won in 2005. He won in 2009. Now, that's five consecutive Republican mayors in the most liberal town in the country. Now, that doesn't mean that these people are reflexively going out and pulling the lever for the people that their grandparents voted for. I mean, people here, they know how to think. They're not like, I don't want to say anything that's going to be controversial, but I mean, people actually think about what they're going to do.
Everything's controversial here, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, that's the thing that's freaking most people I know out. Is New York City still a liberal city? That's a question, right? So that's a real question.
Sure.
So
Not only just your New York, but Seattle. I mean, to be honest with you, we were grabbing breakfast, my daughter and I, yesterday in proper Seattle. I am seeing MAGA hats. Look, Do you? I don't care. But to me, very shocking to be in Seattle. I'm like, whoa, that's they're wearing a Make America Great Again. I'm like, okay, cool. Now,
Well, you wouldn't see that here, man. Not that far gone, but I mean, people go in the voting booth and vote for him. So
when you're at
that's
home by
something that
yourself,
if you're somebody, even if this is the town with AOC in it, right? She managed to win. She got 80% of the vote. Of her, she ran and she got exactly the amount of money, the amount of votes that she usually gets. So
I think
it isn't just that people are becoming more conservative. It's just that there's a sea change in what people want. And people want what people will want in an urban environment as opposed to a suburban or a rural environment, if there is any rural parts left of the United States that are really rural.
right.
The these are something that you begin to think about, because if the goal is to keep it at 50% on both sides, so people are constantly screaming at each other, this is a little chink in that little equation, which requires some thought. And as a kind of like junior pundit, not quite on your level, Mario, but these are the kind of things that you have to think about.
When you think about it too, the wave of the wall, the blue wall that did not exist this time in the election for Kamala Harris. I mean, Trump took that away. It's just interesting how much he took. But look, in that whole case, when you start to think about the election, people privately voting and how they want to vote, I I'm going to be honest with you. If Democrats think that they're going to win things, they better start looking at themselves and look at innovation and how they're going to continue to evolve. Because I will tell you, on TikTok, Twitter, all these social media platforms, look, the Republican Party was pounding the pavement. Good on them, because they were above the rest. Pounding pavement on social media did them well. Whoever they were using, they were getting a message out. Some of the message may have been hearsay, may not been true, may have not been false. We don't know, but it was out there. I mean, it's all
It's out there.
yeah,
That's the most important thing,
right.
right? So whether or not it's true or false is no longer a primary concern. But I mean, the fact that it's out there, and the idea, like Carrie, what's her name? The woman that was what's the one that first said alternative facts. That woman, the blonde haired woman that Trump was Trump's guy person in the beginning. Can't
Yeah.
remember her name, but the when she mentioned that thing about there were facts and there were alternative facts, and the idea that you could choose between the two of them, I mean, that's a triumphant. I mean, there's no doubt that that's the case. So, then facts, the idea of facts, that was a kind of that was owned by the establishment. We're going to establish the facts. So people rebelled against that because they didn't necessarily.
Was that Kellyanne Conway?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. So, like, I'm not saying this is bad or good, because I don't really have at this point, I don't really have a horse in the race, in a lot of ways. I'm just looking at what's happening. And the trending is towards personal narrative. And it's obvious that Donald Trump is a guy with a lot of personal narrative, as opposed to, the Democrats who are pushing this kind of like ancient. I mean, what happened in the last election, the one that, like, from last month or this
Right.
month, I guess,
Right.
is that's the last gasp, the final little kind of breath of the New Deal. The Democrats have been riding on this ever since 1932, ever since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. They have been depending on the idea of this kind of entitlement for every citizen that came up during the Depression. Now, and Joe Biden was the last one of these guys that was still in the Senate. I'm talking about Hubert Humphrey, not Robert Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson. All those people were children of the New Deal, and now there are no none left. So, like, and unless they come up with some new narrative, they're going to keep on losing.
Our guest tonight, Mark Jacobson, the author of Pale Horse Rider, the book about William Cooper. I gotta wonder sometimes as I sit
I
here.
also wrote some other books, you know.
Yeah. But this one's going to be the one that's going to be telling, because you definitely have a bunch of other books. We'll definitely link them in the podcast. But
that's okay. It's okay. I mean, you know,
this
people want
is
to buy that one. It's good with me, you know.
this is the one that I think takes the cake, because when you start to think about like the Alex Joneses of the world, right? And like his whole shtick, how the QAnon became to be the Q. And it's interesting because the evolution, I was like, during that pandemic time, you saw this uprise in conspiracies that were like almost a little too. Now, if you haven't read the book, Behold the Pale Horse, one would be like, if you have, you're like, you turn your head a little bit and you're like, I've heard this before. And then for me, it was like, oh yeah, it's in the book.
Well, Bill Cooper was, you know, he was a person who was in the right place at the right time with the right mentality to be able to kind of see this. People talk about him as a prophet. He's a this, he's a that. And a lot of people that are real big Bill Cooper fans hate this book because I actually did it as a journalist, you know, like I sinned. I actually found out what really happened. So like, as opposed to buying the narrative on all these different things. But the narrative is the main, here's a guy who goes to Vietnam. He's a military guy, gung ho, goes to Vietnam, and he goes there to fight for the Constitution and the American way and all that kind of stuff. And he gets there, and he sees, well, this is fucking bullshit. You know, these people, these people are fighting for their homes. We're the invaders here. Well, how did we get in this situation? And it just dominates his life after that. And he wants to look behind the curtain to see who put him in this spot. So, and it goes on and on and on through all this different stuff. And he becomes I mean, Bill Cooper could be exactly the opposite of a guy like Joe Rogan or Alex Jones, who Alex Jones went to school on Bill Cooper. I mean, he would stay up at night listening to Bill Cooper's broadcasts, and his parents would be screaming at him to turn that stuff off, you know. But he'd sit there with his little transistor radio, you know, like if you can remember that such things existed. This is before the internet.
Whatever his radio
Hour
show.
of the time.
Hour of the time.
Hour of the time.
I hate all Art Bell and
all those people. Plus there's all the rappers who, I mean, there's two editions of Bill Cooper. There's the book, Behold the Pale Horse, and there's the radio show, Hour of the Time. Now, all the black people that were Bill Cooper fans read the book, and they became every single rapper from the golden age of rap, I would say, from about 1988 to 1994. I mean, you could debate that if you want, but I would say that was the best time for rap music. All those people were people that read this Bill Cooper's book, Behold the Pale Horse. And I remember a famous interview I did with Prodigy, who was from Mobb Deep. And I said, is it true that you read Behold the Pale Horse 4 times? And he said, no, man, I read it 6 times. I said, really? He said, well, before you get up there and start to talk to the people, you've got to be right and correct.
Right.
So, you know, this was the truth as far as it was concerned. And also Cooper's book, Behold the Pale Horse, was the single most read book in the New York State prison system and across the entire country as well. And it still is, even though the book came out in 1991. People are still reading this book, which has not been changed until somebody else got a hold of it and chopped out a bunch of the chapters, which is a whole other topic. But you know, and people always come over to me and say, what do you think Bill Cooper would think of Donald Trump?
Sure.
And it's a difficult question because I think that Bill Cooper would not care for somebody who, because he was a big rule of law guy.
Yeah.
You know, rule of law guy. That's what he was. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know of any president that has such little regard for the rule of law as Donald Trump. I'm not saying anything bad about it or good about it. I mean, some of these laws are bad, you know. So, you know, it's just
my understanding of Bill Cooper was that, you know, don't be a sheep, be a lion, understand what's going on, pay attention to what is going on. The government, he was adamant that the government wanted to do some certain things. The secret society was out there, as he would say, to, you know, possibly get you. When we talk about this whole, you know, this huge manifesto, what, you know, which is called Project 2025. Our guest this evening, the author of Pale Horse Rider. You can find him.
Right, go ahead.
Pale Horse at Pale Horse Rider Book on Instagram. And we know that what's his name is celebrated his heavenly birthday. I think you recently talked about Cooper celebrating his birthday, or I think it was recently.
No, it's his death. There are 2 days. The two major days in the Bill Cooper canon. There's his birthday, which is May 4th, 1943, and then there's his death day, which is November 5th, 2001.
Gotcha.
Now, the thing about Bill Cooper's death day, which is really the thing that cements his legacy, is that he said they're about to come and get me. You know, this is a guy who more or less predicted some of 9/11. I mean, most people in the Bill Cooper cult believe that he really predicted 9/11, which is not 100% true, but he did say several months before, actually June 2001, that something big is going to happen in this country that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, which that really happened. So, you know,
right.
I mean, you know, and
I believe that may have been in his radio show.
His radio show. His radio show. So, like, you know, so he's got that kind of thing. So, but his great prediction was they're going to come and kill. They're going to come up here. He lives on top of a mountain in Eagar, Arizona, which is a kind of little mountain ski resort town. Right. So, and he said on the radio several times that one night they're going to come up here and shoot me dead, and I'm going to be dead on my front doorstep. And that's exactly what happened. And he even called the time. He said at midnight. And his death time is 12:05.
Wow.
You know, I mean, some things, you can't argue with that kind of stuff. Right. You know? It's just true. It's just like you can read the police report. It's right there in black and white, right. You know, if you believe such a thing. So, like, you know, I mean, if you're still willing to believe black and white police reports, you know, or if you're progressed to the point where you think that's all bullshit too, but or regressed,
right?
Like so, in any event, let me talk about Project 2025, which I think is a real charade, because
I mean, people are freaked out about it. If you're liberal, you're freaking out right now.
Well,
I mean,
let's just look at what really it is first.
Sure.
Okay, so Project 2025 was produced by the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation, that is a complete, they've been putting out these kind of things since 1981, you know, for what the next president who believes, a guidebook for what the next president who might actually go for any of this stuff should do when they get in office.
For either party.
Well, they're a conservative think tank. They're not interested. The Democrats are not going to pick it up. So, you know, it's for Republican Party things. So the Heritage Foundation, I got all this stuff for you here. Heritage Foundation goes back to the 1950s. People that come out of the John Birch Society and stuff like that. And then let's see. Let's just see here. Hang on a second. I have some actual notes that, in my journalistic way, I have.
You wrote.
I actually have done some research. I mean, Bill Cooper would tell you to do your own research. Now, that is one of the things about Bill Cooper. which unfortunately has been abused by his followers because they believe do your own research means look on the internet until you find the stuff that you already agree with, and then you say that you did your own research.
Gospel. Yeah.
So
Sure.
I mean, that's his most famous phrase, and you hear it
Right.
all the time. Do your
Right.
own research. And also, he's the inventor of the phrase "sheeple." I mean,
Sheep.
he's the person who popularized that phrase. So he's the guy. So in any event, what they eventually did, what the Heritage Foundation is a kind of think tank that came up out of in the 1960s and 70s, partially as a result of the failure of the extremism of the John Birch Society thing, if people know who that is, and they more or less were the architects of the neocon, the nasty neocon thing that all the Trumpers hate. They were the ones that they invented the Reagan doctrine, which was all about foreign policy and how to control, and not exactly the opposite of American first, exactly the opposite. So they're not Trumpers, and when Trump says that he never heard of it and he's not going to follow it and all that kind of stuff like that, he's half doing that Donald Trump thing of like, forgetting or like not including the part that he knows is true or false. But on the other hand, he's telling the truth because these people are basically his enemies in the beginning. What Trump did, his undying achievement that nobody can take away from is that he overthrew the Illuminati, if you want to call it that, cabal as seen by the Bush administrations, the Bush people, those kind of aristocratic,
Secret society.
yeah, all that stuff, the skull and bones
Oh,
stuff, all that stuff that people still think is functional, because they don't bother to do their own research. So like, but Trump did in 2016 when he looked at Jeb Bush and said, "Well, you got a pretty low energy, aren't you, man?" I mean, that was it. They were finished at that point. And I'm
right.
going to give Donald Trump credit for that forever and ever. He is the winner in that situation. And those people deserve to go, man. They really did. I mean, George Bush Jr., George Bush Sr., the first, when he walks into a supermarket and just for election thing, and he sees the poor cashiers making $2 an hour, whatever it was at the minimum wage at that time,
Right.
scanning the products, and he's going, "What's that?" Because he never had ever gone into a supermarket by himself.
So out of touch.
I mean, like, though, these
So
people are not
out
really
of
the kind of people
touch.
you want to vote for, right?
Right.
Because
I
they're
mean,
not like you.
but they did. They did in some very large numbers, obviously, and not as large as the COVID election, but they did. They voted for someone who may be out of touch in regards to when was the last time. Well, that's not true because you saw him put French fries in a thing and did the whole opposite. I mean,
Yeah, but the thing is, like, Trump is just,
it's a great.
he's a new kind of
So
character. He's just,
he's
he's
a
a new
modern
issue.
day showman. He's a modern day elect.
Well,
He's a showman. Like him or love him or hate him, however you want to. Yeah, I mean,
let's not get thrown off. Let's go through
yeah, sure,
the
yeah,
history of 2025
yeah. Let's
first,
go
and
back.
then we can go back to, like,
For sure.
other
Thanks.
stuff.
Yeah.
So in other words, so they did the Reagan doctrine. They were behind the neocons. They were the ones that were pushing the Bush administrations,
The
both of them,
conservative,
to do
the Reagan conservative Christian in the '80s. This was a part of that.
well, the Christian stuff comes later because these people are like, they've had money for years and years. They're old money people.
Okay.
So they're the ones that were pushing for the Iraq invasion, the Afghanistan invasion, and all these things that the Trumper people are against. These people were for. And when Trump first came around in 2016, the head of the Heritage Foundation said that he was a clown and it was like ridiculous that he would even be running. So
Okay.
Donald Trump he's got an ear for people that insult him, so he remembers that kind of stuff. So as the Heritage Foundation is now they were the biggest single think tank and the most funded think tank in Washington. So they're in a situation like say 2017 when Trump's in that they're about to go out of business, right?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
in trouble, right? So they come up with so they've been putting out these reports since 1981 about what the president should do to make a more conservative society. So then they get new leadership. This guy Roberts, I think I can't remember his name, and he's more hip to these kind of things. So he comes up with this thing, which is much more Trump oriented, and then they leak it out, and it becomes this huge Democratic Party talking point because there's stuff in there that is completely objectionable to most people, like the anti-abortion stuff,
Sure.
the kind of like over the top attack on wokeism, which is just a whole other issue, and stuff like all that Christian nation stuff and all that stuff that Trump treads on because he wants votes, but he doesn't believe in any of that. I don't think, that people might think that he has because he got shot and he manages to live, that God's on his side. But I would contend that there's a whole other section of supernatural powers around here that protect people and get them what they want. And it's called, you can go read Faust and check it out.
Right.
So it doesn't mean just because he lives and people shoot at him and he seems to win all the time that he is necessarily favored by Jesus Christ. He could be favored by that guy with the horns and the funny tail. So which I'm not prove it to me that's not true. Okay, so and then so you got this kind of thing. So I think they put out this thing, and the Democrats.
So are you saying
that,
so it was more of a modified version of the Project 2025, taking out and kind of twisting it to be more like a Donald Trump?
Yeah, they're trying to get in the game.
Yeah.
They're trying to catch up.
Right.
This Heritage Foundation thing, are trying to catch up. I'm completely positive this is true. I mean, prove. I mean, I could be wrong,
Right.
but I mean, looking at it, it seems to me like here's a whole power center of these never Trumper types who realize that they are backing the wrong horse. That Donald Trump is going to be the winner, and they want a piece of the pie. So,
Sure.
so the thing comes out. I don't mean to step on your whole premise here. The thing comes out, the Democrats are the ones that publicize it because it's got stuff in there that, like, not only is it this kind of Christian nationalist stuff that most people, who believe in the separation of church and state are not going to be that crazy about, which I think is probably, I don't know, maybe I'm just completely wrong about that, but I think a lot of people find that objectionable, so,
There
and
should
there's
be
stuff in there.
there
Go
should
ahead.
be separation of church and state, but go ahead.
Well, whatever. So there's stuff in this thing that Trump would never in a million years go for. Like they want to outlaw pornography. It's in the Project 2025, outlaw pornography. Do you realize what that would do? Do you realize how much money would be lost?
There
How
are a
much,
bunch of
how much
25, 54-year-olds listening to the radio right now and saying, "What?"
I mean, do you really think that a country that's willing to put gambling advertisements on every single sporting event is gonna outlaw something which is an addictive practice like pornography? The whole country runs on addiction. That is Mark Jacobson. The whole country runs on addiction. I'll stand by that statement. So like
We need to make
this is
t-shirts with that.
every single thing that happens, in the Trump world. I mean, I'm not a big fan of William Burroughs, but he predicted all this. Everything is permitted, everything is permitted. So like now everything which was bad is now good. You should gamble on you should spend all your time and effort thinking about whether all the parlays you're going to make on these different college football teams that you don't even care about, so like you don't even know and never heard of them until yesterday, but now you want to make a bet on it, and that's all you care about. So this is
Southeast. Southeast Oklahoma University versus,
Yeah,
USC,
so
whatever the case may be. Yeah.
well, I mean, there's a whole. I mean, I could write a big gigantic essay about this, and maybe I will. But what it is the abuse of the American ideal of the individual. In other words, you want to sell this individualism thing, the idea that you can make up your mind and do what you want, and the government can't tell you what to do, blah 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 blah. And but you want to control what that individual does. You want to make them feel like they have free will, but actually through propaganda and addictive behavior and all that kind of stuff, you are being able to pull the strings just the way people used to think that the other Illuminatis used to pull the strings. So who are the string pullers in this particular incarnation of this kind of thing? I would submit that they don't care. There's no such thing as a curtain anymore. It's all out in the open. I mean, guys, the people, most people will say, well, Elon Musk is really running the government. And there's a case to be made there. So,
Right.
the fact is you need to look at this kind of stuff and go really look behind the curtain, which is not the curtain that we grew up to believe, like the QAnon curtain. It's just a different kind of curtain that's going to enable this kind of government to get in. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, because it seems like people are willing to vote for authority figures. They want authority figures. They want somebody to tell them what to do. And so the less choice, the less confusing choice is going to be better. And I can't really argue with that, because life is a confusing thing.
But
So,
I mean, think about it. I can't imagine that one person who is of from this country, who loves the United States, isn't about freedom.
it's about freedom. Freedom is the key issue.
Yeah.
Freedom is a key issue, but it's not necessarily. You have to
But at
rethink.
what
That's
cost?
that's
At
the
what
phrase.
cost?
That's the phrase that people need to think about a lot. What is exactly freedom? What does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to a larger construct like the United States of America, which probably, in my particular view, probably should cease to exist? In a way, at least have some fundamental change, because you have stuff like, I go to the polls to vote for president. I
Yeah.
don't want to vote for either one of these fuckers. So like, but I feel like I'm from Queens, right? Donald Trump is from Queens. I know him. I'm not voting
Right.
for him, right? So like, and so, but I don't want to vote for her. So, so I vote for her, and even that I know, because I live in New York State, which is a Democratic state, that my vote means nothing. So how does that indicate that I'm a free person, at least in terms of electoral policy? And a lot of people feel that way, and that's the reason why you get 20 million people not show up.
Disenfranchised. I think that for those who, and this is where I get to do the speculation and just kind of go over what is actually put down pen to paper, or type vertically or virtually to paper, what this project might look like, what the Heritage Foundation might try to get an administration to do. And is it to give him, to consolidate? Are we looking for the United States government to consolidate executive power and promote conservative policies, initiatives, spearheading by this Heritage Foundation that would basically essentially give
I don't think the
more
Heritage
money?
Foundation has got an oar in the water, man. I think that they're yesterday's papers. When you think anybody that is like, lives in some kind of place like outside of Washington or in Georgetown, or has old money, wants Matt Gates to be the attorney general. I mean, come on, that is just not. That Donald Trump is way past there. These
Right.
little kind of like
Well, like,
bureaucratic ideas. He
uh,
doesn't care about that.
or,
And
or
it
what about, like,
remains to be seen. I'm willing to entertain at this moment something I wouldn't entertain say when we made that last broadcast with Mike, right?
Right.
That this might actually be, who knows? Maybe it'll be better. Maybe it will be better. Maybe this authoritarian idea will actually improve the life of people. I doubt it, but it might. I'm willing to wait and see what happens.
Are we going to see? Are we going to see a smaller consolidated government? Are we going to see the ways of abolishing the Department of Education as everyone is talking about? Are we going to see?
Do you think that's a good idea, Mario?
I mean, no, not by any means. I mean, that's dumb because we got to think of, regardless of what side of the fence you're on, we need American children to grow up to be smart individuals, and you're going to need some. It's not, maybe they're going to put someone in the Department of Education to, incentivize teachers. Who knows how that looks for.
You think that's really possible in this? I mean, when you had Betsy DeVos already, they're probably going to get somebody more to the right than her. I mean, which is almost impossible. So like, they want to abolish the Department of Education. Maybe that's a good idea. That could be a good idea because, I mean, right. It's interesting.
I mean,
what about somebody like myself? I am a states' writer now.
Right.
I mean, when I grew up, states' rights meant George Wallace standing in the door, not letting black people into school. So therefore, I was against states' rights. But now, when it seems like the federal government is going to be more authoritarian and more to the right than my particular taste, while New York State, as messed up as it is with this moron government we have, might turn out to be, just because of the people who live here, might be a much more conducive place for me to live. So therefore, I'd rather go by those laws than the laws that are going to be passed by the Congress.
I mean, are we going to see a more authoritarian FCC coming down on some of these big broadcast companies for the way they report on, on the news? Are we going to see something like that? To me, that seems that we are not the party of freedom. This to me seems like a restrictive party, a party that has moved away from some certain values like freedom. And
you're talking about the Republicans?
Yes.
Well, I think it's already happened. I mean, it's already happened. You already see it. They fractured. The niche marketing of the internet is a sea change. Donald Trump is the only one. I mean, he realizes that you go on Joe Rogan, you don't have Beyonce on your show. I mean, you go on Joe Rogan, you talk to the people that you can actually influence on a one-to-one level. You don't put on I mean, why would Kamala Harris run exactly the same campaign that Hillary Clinton did when she's already lost? What's the point about that? Why would you do a thing like that?
And even for her case, she should have went on Joe Rogan. If Joe said he invited her to come on and they said no, it's not like Joe. I mean, let's be honest. I can't imagine Joe Rogan's going to sit there and go after her. I think he would have probably had a normal conversation with her, and because what everyone is saying is the substance was a little bit lacking of he was probably going to ask her some interesting questions that were probably substance based, and they probably couldn't come to an agreement. And he said, hey, let's have a conversation. It's the same thing I do on the show. I'm not going to send 25 questions to an author or someone, like, I'm not pre-scripting it. It's not going to go down that way. And
that was just a failure of her ability to be able to think on her feet.
But think about all that free press that they got for that podcast. Well,
Trump is an entertainer. He's the front man for the coming world oligarchy. As far as why I always see it, the big picture, the mega picture.
Right.
Trump and guys like Orban and Putin and those kind of guys like that. There are people that are called irredentists. Not to get too hard or academic about it. Irredentists are people like every single one of Trump's natural allies in the world stage right now, as it represents a country that used to be an empire. The Russian Empire, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the conservative that's in Italy, the Roman Empire. All these people that feel like yesterday was better than today. Now we got this shitty little country. Erdogan, he's another guy. The Ottoman Empire used to extend from the Caspian Sea all the way into the middle of Europe. You don't think those people still think about those days? Now, maybe we can get that back. So Trump's idea, make America great again, which is, you know,
It worked.
did you ever ask anybody what that meant? What is this time with that America was so great? Back during the segregation times when they were like lynching people, and what are they talking about?
The
Tell
Reagan
me,
days.
tell
It's got
me.
to be the Reagan days, right? It's got to be the Reagan days.
Well,
Minus the
if he's
economy and
been
all.
running on this for the past 16, what's this, 24, 8 years, he's been putting out these hats. It would be nice if you actually knew what it meant before you put it on your head, right? So
Look, as you said, whatever the substance was, it stuck. Whatever was the substance,
there you go. That's all that matters now. So
right. I mean, essentially, I mean, when you start to think about it, I mean, I don't know, man. Just going back through the entire thing, it's just an interesting turn of events. If you're a Democrat, that's just how the cookie crumbles. And I know a lot of people were probably distraught. I mean, obviously the trends of things went up, and look, being in the conspiracy, to be in the business of conspiracies and all, Bigfoots and UFOs.
I think you're in trouble, Mario.
No.
I think your conspiracy business is in trouble, man.
Why? I think it's
because you already won. I mean, it's like you need the so-called leftists, to be in power to enable your product. I love you, Mario, and I hope you succeed in every way, shape, form. But I mean, the thing is that there's a certain kind of thing of a market product that it's like it needs a certain kind of environment to be able to survive.
Here's what I'm going to say, and we will continue to survive, but I'm going to tell you why. Because we were sold. We may have been sold ketchup popsicles with white gloves. Okay, we were wearing the white gloves, and they sold us ketchup popsicles. If
ketchup popsicles, what do you mean?
If this in fact goes the way of a huge movement in this Project 2025, restrictive of rights, I mean, what? The courts are not going to take your gun rights away, right? That's not going.
Well, and that I'm going to predict that if these guys stay in power and they consolidate their power, you're going to start to see some restrictions on gun rights, because the existing power does not want people running around with guns. That's the reason why, there's no guns in China. People are stabbing each other like crazy, but they don't have any guns because the power there is completely it's a totalitarian system. They do not want the people to have guns.
What was that do to a red American whose gold blood is all American, America first, God and country, and I have my gun? You know what I mean? Like, what happens to that individual?
Times change. And you're going to have to, if you want to support, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I really not making a prediction here at all. But I mean, the thing is, if nobody would dispute, I think, the fact that this is a more, or depending on what your definition of this word is, the coming time is going to be a more authoritative time. And you've got the executive officer, telling you that he's going to make these appointments, which are likely to be unpopular, even with him controlling both houses of the Congress, that he's going to do it during the recess because he doesn't want anybody to say anything bad about it. That's a kind of I'd say that's sort of authoritarian. So if that's the way it's going to be and people are going to buy into it, then eventually they're going to say, it's not going to be too long before gun rights. I mean, the reason why, let me refresh people's memory if they ever could think about this. The reason why California has such it's conservative, I guess, gun rights, that it's difficult to get a gun in California as opposed to some other states, is because the Black Panthers showed up at one of these trials, and Jonathan Jackson or something like that, and they were exerting their Second Amendment rights to have guns. And once Ronald Reagan, who was the governor of the state at the time, got a look at that, he said, well, we got to do something about that. And they put in a bunch of gun laws. So, there's going to be something like that. It's going to be something like that. And then the government is going to be upset about it. And they're going to start telling you that you can't this and that, maybe not concealed carry is a bad idea,
No more
I
open
mean,
carry.
yeah, open carry is bizarre to me to begin with. But, you go to the supermarket and a lady who's like, 40, an 80-year-old lady has got a little raspberry handled gun, that seems like, wow, this is weird.
I mean,
But, I
former
mean,
soldier.
coming from where I'm coming from, it seems weird, but,
I mean,
each to
I
his
mean,
own, local
I just told the
control.
story. I just told the story last week on the show, and made a clip on the YouTubers page that when I was in Chipotle, guy didn't want to wear his mask, which is fine. You do what you want to do. And this is during the pandemic. He was open carrying. Well, I'm in Chipotle line waiting to have, I want a bowl of Chipotle, right?
Yeah.
And my dad would probably be pissed if he heard this right now. But so we're into Chipotle, and the guy has his he has his open carry, and I can see it. And the guy next to him's like flailing his arms, doing his thing. And I'm like, this guy doesn't see anything that's going on right now, oblivious to the guy. But he goes like this. He puts his hand on his gun to protect it. He orders his food. I laugh. I'm like, well, if this is going to be the way I go out, I'm going to have hot sauce all over me. But I'm going out and I'm going out with a bowl of Chipotle Chipotle dinner. So on that to get back on the topic, people should be freaked out if they're going to start revoking rights. I mean, we're talking about
Well,
hey,
they're all, but it's like, I don't know.
I mean
It is going to be some pushback. It's
this
going
is
to be pushback, which there always is.
right. But even
But
like
how that pushback is going to manifest itself is not yet determined, and the people that are currently in charge of the pushback are completely incompetent at that. So you're going to need some different people to run that pushback, and we're going to have to see what happens. And I think about maybe year 2 or something like that of the second Trump administration. It'll happen because it inevitably happens. The reason why Biden ran again is because they couldn't believe that they didn't lose seats in 2022. They go, wow, fantastic, we didn't lose seats. So, let's just, they were stupid enough to go with the status quo. So they didn't know the guy was a blithering idiot. So, they made a mistake. And it was a grievous mistake. So, you know,
I mean,
it's going to happen. Trump is going to get less popular than he is now. And then how is that unpopularity going to manifest itself? And who is going to attempt to move into that void of power that Trump is now holding? Because his power base is going to shrink. It's inevitable. I mean, if it's not inevitable, that means that you've got some kind of like Mussolini type people running around telling people that they better think this way, which is not really where we're at yet, thank God, and I don't believe that's ever going to happen. I'm a loyal American. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, for the sake of my business, anything's possible, right? I mean, you could see mass deportation. This could be the most aggressive stance on immigration, that could possibly take place, a mass deportation.
Well, Mario, I can tell by the last syllable of your name, the last letter of your name, that you have an immigrant background.
Well,
I can tell that. A lot of people feel that way.
Sure.
I'm a second generation American. So
But
America is a great place that you can go from the old country to producing some beatnik like myself in one generation. So, like,
I mean,
it's going to be interesting.
Born in Seattle, lived here my entire life.
Yeah, but you know that you have another life before them.
Well, I mean, there have been social media posts that I've seen that have said certain things that we only voted for Trump for racial reasons. I mean, it was quite interesting to see. If I can find it again, I'll send it your direction. But it was pretty astonishing. Look, regardless of how this is going to play out, this could be. You could have been sold something that may not work. You want a refund. You'll have. You may
want a refund, right?
There's no refund, but you might want one. You might want one. I mean, if you're going to start losing your rights, and this is why
Donald Trump is a guy who doesn't even pay people that work for him. You think he's going to give you a refund on that?
Probably not. But here's what I want to get to before we wrap this whole show up here. If Bill Cooper was alive, what the hell do you think he would have said about 2025, Project 2025? And
I think he would say it was a lot of restriction of American rights. I think that's what he would think. I would hope that's, I'm a Bill Cooper fan. I recognize that he has a lot of shortcomings, but I wouldn't have written a book about him if I didn't think he was basically somebody who was interesting enough to write a book about. So, I would hope that he would feel that way. And I think he would, because,
he would be going against the grain and say, look, wake up. Are you doing your research?
Some people are just naturally contrarian, and I think he's probably one of those kind of people. But I will go to my grave believing that somebody like Bill Cooper, who puts a lot of emphasis on thinking for yourself and seeing through the bullshit and all that kind of stuff. At least this is the ideal case of him. Would think that man, there's more than meets the eye here. I mean, come on. Let's not just buy all this stuff, just because you're a fan of Barstool Sports doesn't mean that you definitely should vote for this guy. I mean, give me a break. I mean, the whole bro culture is really kind of a little disturbing to me, man. Because that's the Vance world. Vance world. The right-wing technocrats who are basically running the show here. They're thinking that Donald Trump's going to die in a couple of years. I mean, how many cheeseburgers can a guy eat? And then and he'll croak, and then they'll make him into this great martyr and hero. And then their guy, Mr. Vance, will rise up with his little beard, and he'll, just then you might worry about the Project 2025 thing, because Donald Trump doesn't listen to what's in a book. He does whatever he wants to do. So, and he's more power to him, A lot of pricks wanted to be the president of the United States. He's the only one that managed to get it, right? So you got to hand it to the guy, So
the guy that went against
all the credit in the world for that, But there aren't many people like that. He's a sui generis person, as they say, and there just aren't very many people like that.
It's interesting. Someone who spent most of his time as a known for spending a lot of time with Democrats and then taking a stance and flipping to a party that welcomed him in to becoming the new face of the Republican Party.
Well, take a look at go back and if you're in the moves, take a look at 2012 when Donald Trump first comes out with the birther thing, which is the beginning of Donald Trump as a serious political candidate, as strange as it may seem. The Republican Party, after losing with Mitt Romney and John McCain, began to realize that they can't run these kind of middle-of-the-road, old-school Republican guys like, Mitt Romney, one of the things that killed him was that he was the head of Bain Capital. The worst kind of people, everybody hated those kind of people, because they were the ones that seemed to be exactly the kind of people that all the conspiracy people would hate.
Right.
The controllers of capital, these kind of deep capitalist system guys, really calling the shots from behind closed doors and stuff like that. So they had a meeting, the Republican Party, and they began to figure out, how can we build a candidate who is going to be able to win elections? Look it up. I mean, it's not far. You can find it easily. And they decided, stupidly enough, that they would become more kind of like egalitarian. They would come up with something which was they put more black people in, all that kind of stuff. That was their idea, which was about the stupidest thing if you want to win elections. So when Donald Trump comes along and he's got a completely different agenda and he wins, they go, wow, we never thought of that. We never thought of that.
He wanted to drain the swamp. I mean, let's
Drain the swamp. Drain the
Yeah,
swamp. That
whatever.
is that is also another one of these bullshit things. You want to get rid of everybody who knows anything about their job, right? That's
Right.
what you want to do. That doesn't sound like a really that. If you ran a business, would you fire every single person who actually knew something about their job?
If
You
I'm
know,
trying to be a dictator, yes. If I'm trying to be a dictator and they're not a loyalist, then yes, that's what we would do.
well, then yeah, I think I agree with exactly what you just said. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Because the thing is that, like,
But yeah, you
is
don't
that
want
is
to.
that really where you want to live? I mean, you want these people to have power over you. So,
Well, and hence the reason why we have to do the show. I mean, it's got to be put out there. I mean, we got to think for ourselves.
well,
We
you
need
might
to
want to. You
remember.
might, but after this, you might turn into like this left wing show. Who knows?
I mean, who knows? I mean, who knows? But we're always. I think the biggest thing, regardless on who wins the election,
We know who won.
well, I mean, right. In future elections, I think it's always not always sexy, but it's good to talk about what could possibly be one of the most. I mean, right now is the biggest thing right now. 2025 project. This is the thing that everyone's Googling and searching. We got to talk about it. It's not
Well,
like.
I mean, I think if people want to look at it, I think they should look up the history of the Heritage Foundation, which is the author of this particular document, and which Trump. I mean, the reason why the Democrats were harping on it is because there were so many people that were the authors of this document that used to work in the Trump administration. But the fact of the matter is, the Trump administration between 2016 and 2020, and the more Steve Bannon oriented 2024 victory, it's a different thing.
Well, sure. I mean,
People have
think
to
about it.
realize that it's a
If you're a
different
liberal,
thing.
LGBT plus rights, that could be an issue for you. Abortion access. I mean, yeah,
Those are all losing issues, as
right.
has been demonstrated.
Well, I mean, in any case, a party that I like to call the party of freedom, which is, as we like to say, is no longer what the party is. But to me, it just makes me say, hey, look, guys, just remember what we were sold so that we know in the future, do your research, know what's going on. Because you know what? I'm not always buying the bullshit that's being put to paper or spewed on the internet, because everything now is speculation. I spend more time researching and looking at stuff, and I'm like, man, was that real? Was that AI? What did I just get fed?
I think that's the main question. That's something you really got to think about, because now, I mean, everybody who's really upset about being abducted by aliens, stuff like that. You're being abducted by aliens on a daily basis, right?
I
So,
mean, that
like,
was right. I
it's
mean,
like,
that was a couple weeks. That was a show we just did recently. But yeah, UAPs is a thing. Is that a distraction? Are we seeing a distraction? Is that a distraction? Is that hearing? That hearing was already meant to that hearing was already happening, regardless on who was elected, who was going to be the person elected to sit in the future House of the presidency. So regardless, it's not like some conspiracy saying, oh, this is a distraction for blah 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 blah. What's really let's be honest. The distraction was Mike Tyson fight. That was
that. See, I used to be a huge boxing fan. I mean,
man.
I would go to the fights all the time, and I just completely lost interest in this thing. And this. I didn't even pay attention to that. I mean, the idea that you got a 60-year-old guy fighting against a YouTube star, and how can you take that seriously? And 60 million people tuned
Not
in.
only is he a
So
YouTube
this is
star,
not
but
the
he's a
country that I
former.
really want to live in.
I mean,
You know?
he's not even. He's also a former Disney star too. It's just interesting to me. And my daughter and I,
That was a low mark. That was a low mark.
very much a low mark. But you know what? It was cool to see that my daughter and I were. She was like, I hope Mike Tyson just pounds him, and I'm like, we'll see. But
I mean,
I
the
mean,
thing is that, like, you're going to root for a convicted rapist,
right.
over this guy just because he's more real.
But,
It's like,
but I think that this is something that America has come to see. At least this is what I observed. Is I think America has forgotten what is today. What was yesterday's headline is not today's news, because clearly none of that was even brought up at all. None of that was brought up, Mark. I mean, that really just shows how we've become as a society, on how people
it's an
think.
addictive society. It's an addict
Give you another
society,
hit.
right? You know,
Give you
and
another hit.
that is it, man. It's just,
Let
I
me
mean,
give you
when
that.
a TV show does well, what do they say? It's addictive. It's like, I'm telling you,
Right.
it's a society of addicts, and that kind of like when you tap into that, you become like Trump and his guys, and the Democrats too. I mean, they're all sacklers. They're all sacklers.
We're all
They're all people that are betting on the fact that people just keep on doing what they do habitually, and they're not going to be looking around because all they care about is the next fix. So
not
and
only that, but they only care
that's the downside of being a junkie. It kind of narrows your vision. So
you get the tunnel vision. It's all about you. It's not
all
about
about you and getting high, man. And you're talking to a longtime pothead, But so I
right.
don't know. I just feel like it's going to be interesting to see what happens because society goes on a long time. I mean, for instance, I was looking up this idea. I saw an article in today's New York Times, pardon the expression, that women are giving up men.
Oh, the 4B movement. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to give up men. I
Gerald.
mean, okay, that's going to be fantastic for the future, right? No reproduction.
Well, that was the
So,
first thing I said. I was like, why would you do that? If you're a liberal, why would you do that? In fact, maybe you should
well,
have
you're
more.
not a liberal. You're not a liberal because that's another thing which is really too bad is that the term liberal has been so demonized in this society that if you admit that you're a person, a liberal person who is willing to entertain, which really means you're willing to entertain all different kinds of ideas, it is not necessarily that you're like going to be like Andrea Dworkin or, whatever bad demons people think of liberals. It's just one of these terms that gets demonized, and then people hate it. So
Whoever is a part of the 4B movement, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm all about do your thing. I don't know that.
luckily there are only about 20 of these people, thank God.
I don't know. I think they're probably larger numbers out there. Although I'm not seeing them on the dating sites. I'm still getting dates. So that's a good sign.
You're not looking at the right dating site, Mark.
Look, I'm not married.
At the wrong dating site.
I'm not married. Mark, I want to settle down. I want to have someone to hang out with and to be able to grow old with, and
these people are off the radar for you, man.
Sure.
They're not going to be available, and I heard every single one of them is really fantastic looking.
I'm sure. I'm sure they're just.
I mean, at risk of saying something that you shouldn't say.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
but I mean, that bro culture, the incel culture is a victor in this.
It really seems to be that. I don't know. It's not even a Gen X thing. I think it's more of that bro culture is that new. I don't even want to say names, man, but it is out there big time right now.
Bro culture. It's
on TV.
Have you ever seen so much sports on TV? Have you ever seen any of this kind of stuff?
Mark, I'll tell you why you're seeing all the TV stuff, all the stuff, because everything it's cheap. I mean, to produce this stuff, it is cheap. I mean, look at radio stations across the country right now are laying people off. Maybe it's because they're going to go to state radio and we just don't know it yet. But
well, I mean, how can you be against? NPR is really boring.
Well,
what would NPR be like if it was actually interesting?
I mean, but the show's not being run on NPR, that's for sure, because they will not take the show.
I wouldn't take the show, but the thing is that they, some better NPR might take your show. So, like,
Right.
The idea is that you just have to break out of these boxes that they put you in. This is the main idea of the society right now, to put you in a stupid little box that's been self-determined of like, I'm not going to be in that box, so I better be in this one. And if you're not going to really be willing to think for yourself or like do your own research and in an actual comprehensive way, as opposed to being lazy and stupid about this kind of stuff. Like, well, yeah, it looks to me like
Right, well, yeah, whatever
the
it is.
commies are bad. Okay.
Right, well, it could be
You
anybody.
know?
It could be any of it. It could be any of us that could be in that piece. I mean, look,
Resistance, baby, resist. That's what
and
I
that's
say.
right. We're gonna need.
Resist the contemporary order of things and acknowledge the fact. I mean, I was getting these texts from people like, Trump is a winner, right? So these people, all they can do is complain. I said, do you see anything happening that's good in the future, or you just want to bitch about the past? And then nobody has anything to say.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
they suddenly their channel suddenly goes blank when you're asking about, like, well, what kind of society? I know what you hate. Tell me what you like. Like, or tell me like a better future, a better tomorrow, as opposed to a more miserable yesterday, and all the things that you're bitching about and griping about. Just take that off the table and see what's left. All right. Do that for me, and then I'll start listening to you more, because I got it memorized, all the gripes, all the grievances, all the stuff that people hate, that this is the reason why I'm not doing better in this world. Never look at me. It's always somebody else's fault.
And that's
Like,
that's
so,
their, that's
like,
their own
why don't we just get rid of that? That'll be good.
that's their own downfall for being that small-minded. You got to think outside the box. You got to be a thinker. You got to be ingenuitive. You got to recreate yourself. You got to continue to grow. Growth mindset, ladies and gentlemen. You got to have growth mindset. And I kid about that piece, but do what's best for you. Whatever that might be. I don't know. Maybe it's read a book. Do something with yourself. And don't, if you're upset with the election, then make sure you get involved. Do something that would better off for your party. I don't know what that might be, but I'll tell you right now, I'm going to continue to be a free thinker. I'm going to continue to do as many shows as I possibly can. And if I see something that I think that needs to be sniffed out, we're going to continue to talk about it, regardless if it's good, bad, ugly. Maybe it's sexy. Maybe it's a whole. Maybe we're doing the 2020. We're going to do the prediction show coming up, and we're going to have Michael Parker back on. And for God,
Mike, I want to see Mike. I want to see
Mike. We want you back.
Come on back, Mike.
He's coming. I know he'll come back. but think, I got to give you some doomsday scenarios. Maybe things are going to change. Are we good? Who knows? I mean, we'll have some fun with it. But again, if you're part of the, what is that culture? Everyone gets a one of these participation awards. I don't remember getting those back in the day when we did.
Oh man, you got to get rid of that shit. I mean, there's like,
it's like,
come on, let's just have some honest competition here.
Sure.
I mean,
there was none of that. There was none of that back in the day, man. There was none of that when you did field day. There was like, you did field day.
I mean, but you can't. If there's some kind of community, you have to. One of the things that's very important, I think, and people are not thinking about it, is like, how do you build a better community? Like what really is the bet? What are the things that people have in common that you can begin to find some identity in yourself from others, as opposed to this crazy fucking American ideal, which is not really an American ideal, of this individual, I stand alone, nobody tells me what to do. I mean, great. I mean, you want to doom yourself to ignorance? Go ahead, right ahead. I mean, if the past is of no interest to you, I don't care about it. That's yesterday. When was that? When did that happen? Who cares?
Right.
That stuff is just, it's wrong. It's just not human.
Well, I think we're going to see more of the. I think the kid gloves are coming off. I think we're going to be able to walk without wearing a balloon anymore. You're going to start to see that. If what you're seeing is a trend in the bro culture, you're going to see a lot of the politically correct stuff that we've seen in the last 15 years, 12 years. I think you're going to see a lot of that change.
If they want to just be part of their own little karass there.
Yeah.
You can keep on telling people that you're never speaking to them if you use the wrong pronoun, but more power to them. I don't want to talk to them. So, like,
Look, everyone,
everybody's got to give a little bit around here.
sure,
Whatever happened to that?
I think you're seeing a lot of that too, Mark. You're seeing a lot of that. Our guest this evening, Mark Jacobson, author, journalist. You can find him at on Instagram at Pale Horde Writer Book. We'll have him linked in the podcast as we wrap things up from the Pacific Northwest and all the way on the east side of the country, on the East Coast, one coast to the net. From one
coast to coast.
Oh yeah, from one coast. Cease and assist. Give me a cease and assist letter from those guys.
Oh really?
No,
I don't know, Mario. I still long to hear you in the
intro.
In the art bell chair. Though.
Yeah, maybe one day it will.
Actually, on another topic. Did you see this thing it's on Netflix? I think about the Manhattan alien abduction case.
Yeah.
Actually, I actually personally, my wife and I saw that. We would happen to be walking underneath by the Brooklyn Bridge, and we saw that saucer.
Oh, that's
We saw that woman Carol Rainey, who's supposedly she's married. She was married to Bud Hopkins.
Right.
I mean, she called me on the phone because I had written about seeing this thing, whatever it was, and it was weird, man. It's very weird. It doesn't seem like a very good show, but I mean, it was interesting to me.
It's interesting. You think the guy who does this show would be like, knee deep into all that stuff. But to be honest with you, if it ain't headlines and I'm not seeing it and I'm not doing my own research on it, I'm not watching it. I mean, I did watch there are some that I'll watch, like the Bill Cooper thing. And my daughter and I were like, why is there 7 episodes of Bill Cooper? He hijacked a plane. It didn't take very long. Why is
DB Cooper?
Yeah,
Bill Cooper.
Yeah, DB Cooper. Sorry. Thank you.
Please.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't skyjack a play. But anyhow, when we were watching the DB Cooper thing, it was like way drawn out. It should have been maybe an hour and a half, maybe an hour episode. But it was a 6-part series or 4-part series. And my daughter's like, this is way too long. I just
it's way too long. Yeah, that's the problem. Way too long.
She goes, well, and it's dumb. She is a believer that I forget the not DB Cooper was, I forget the guy's name who hijacked the plane in San Francisco. McCoy. His name was McCoy or something like that. But my daughter's like, that was Bill Cooper or DB Cooper, not Bill Cooper. Man, I get all the Coopers all messed up, and they're not related, by the way.
There's a lot of Coopers,
right? So DB Cooper, obviously, but Mark, interesting to think with this whole UFO thing being so trendy right now, and
it's always it never goes out of style, man.
Come on, man.
Come on, it never will.
Never will
until it's proven one way or the other, and it'll never be.
I mean, us doing shows on it, it was perfect timing, but
because it's fun, man.
It's always fun.
I mean, that's real actual speculation.
I mean, that was a great start. I mean,
because
for
also
sure.
it involves actual thought and thinking about the space of the universe, as opposed to these little kind of and the propaganda is. I mean, propaganda is a bad thing. So, like, let's just talk about a topic that's
fun. It's different. It just it changes the narrative. It gives you something to think about. That's not the last, headline news of what's been going on, and gives you escape from reality. I mean, I will say this: when we're on the radio show in Seattle on 570, our flagship station, KBI. It is an honor to be that Art Bell flanks at 9 p.m. and then we go on at 10. So Art leads the move and then hands the baton to us at 10 p.m.
That's good. Bill Cooper used to hate Art Bell, by the way.
Oh, I know he does.
He did.
That was his, but he also had this thing for AG too. Alex Jones later on, he was like, call him a kind of a.
People don't like competition,
Yeah,
it's just like,
hence the reason why, good on George and those guys over there. They do a good job. I mean, they do what they do.
I like them. They've asked me on a few times. I'm more than happy to go on.
Here's what I will say. There's plenty of space for everybody to be where they need to be. I'm in my lane. They're in their lane. They do what they do. I do what I do. Maybe it's not, I mean, and that's how it just plays out. But I will tell you this. In 2025, it is my goal. I've made it very, very clearly that we will be on more radio stations in 2025 moving forward. That is the plan. That is the goal. And maybe we'll be on TV. It will be a lot harder.
Then you got to put the makeup on. Oh, no.
Oh, I mean, come on, right? You can put you in the little. I will tell you this. TV is much harder to do because producing wise, what we've done, I'll have to go back. I would have to go back and edit some and most of those, of our conversation, not for the F-bombs, for the explicit content. But you know what? I mean, if you watch Game Day or Pat McAfee, I mean, but we're on terrestrial radio. So it changes it. And same with, I mean, Game Day is not on normal TV. So you don't see that in all the cable network stuff. So that's why you've seen a lot of these F-bombs and things like that getting passed through, because it's like F-bomb. You go back and you'll watch some of this Pat McAfee stuff, man. It's kind of funny.
I try not to watch people that wear wife beaters on TV.
Right. It is what it is. But when he dresses up for College Game Day, but you're right. It's just a different, mentality. But
I just, I feel like if I'm interested in sports, I want to hear them talk about sports. I don't want to hear him talk about his private life or any of that kind of stuff like that, because it's not interesting to me. Sure. So, in any event, it's been great.
As we wrap things up here from the Pacific Northwest and the East Coast of New York, our guest tonight, Mark Jacobson, who is a journalist. Because you say you're retired, but journalists never retire.
I'm not even saying I'm retired anymore. I'm just, I accepted the reality that I'm never going to retire.
Right.
Unfortunately for me.
We'll have the links provided below. But again, as we say, if you're nervous about the 2025 Project 2025 and it's coming to get you, do your research. That's all we're saying. Just do your research. Know the facts. Understand. That's all I can say. We'll have some links that we'll provide if you're maybe you're not maybe you need the Cliff Notes version. We'll provide that in the podcast so that you'll have the podcast.
Cliff Notes are us.
Yeah, Cliff Notes are us. Project 2025 for Dummies is going to be available. No, I'm not going to write the book.
Well, that works both ways, actually.
Yeah, right. For my entire team, I'd like to thank our guest tonight. Thank you, Mark, for coming to hang out with us. For my entire team, Mark Christopher, Sophia Magana, and myself, Mario Magana. Be sure to look up at the sky because you never know what you might see. Good night.